We are now logged in as the vendor, and as you can see, the dashboard view is slightly different from what a user would get. From here, we can click on this last option, the signed off work orders, and access the work order we were looking at. Just as we saw from the user side, the Create Invoice button is now available for the vendor also. So we're going to be clicking on that. We're going to select the materials, and in this case, it was ballast that needed to be replaced. We're going to be entering just some sample data. This will be the number of hours that they worked. And the standard vendor profile enables a vendor to pre-populate their rates so that when they're filling out an invoice, that information will pull from their profile and will carry over. And once you make the selections of what type of rate applies, that value will update automatically for them. Notice that we're leaving the tax field blank when we are creating this invoice. That is because there are two invoice types here, line item types, that would enable them to complete the GST and the PSD. So I'm just going to enter a sample number. Of course, it would make the correct calculations and enter the valid percentage. And now that they have completed the invoice, they can attach a document to it in the same manner that we have been attaching documents to the previous examples that we have reviewed. So invoice attachment. And this could be, for example, if they have their own version of the invoice that they generated through their accounting system, they can attach a PDF of that document, for example. Okay, and now that information would be available for us to view from the user side. And once they have completed all of the pertinent fields here, they're going to submit the invoice by pressing send. And here they get to enter their own invoice number if they have their own number. That is actually a required field, and the system will check to make sure that the invoice number they are entering is unique and they can never use the same vendor invoice number twice. Okay, so now we have the invoice marked as sent, and we're going to be logging in as the store manager for that particular store, and I believe that was 992. And from here I can view my invoices. So we're going to go to the Open Invoices grid and review the invoice that was submitted by the vendor a few moments ago. If I want to, I can open that attachment. I can just click on this link here and review the attachment that the vendor submitted. And I can jump back and forth between the invoice and the work order by clicking on the View Work Order button. From here, I will be able to review the service history notes, and I can jump back to the invoice by clicking on the View Invoice button. So here I would review all of the information, make sure that the vendor has completed everything that they needed to provide. And we would at that time mark the invoice as approved. And as you can see, the account information is being pre-populated for us based on the service category. All we have to do is select whether this is an expense or a capital invoice, and 99% of the invoices you're going to come across would be an expense invoice. You have a separate approval process for capital invoices, so you would always more than likely be selecting the expense option here. And you can enter notes. And complete the approval process. And this invoice will now be visible to you by going to the Paid Invoices section. And this is where all of your paid and approved invoices are going to be located. Your system is having a special integration with your Lawson accounting system, where you will be exporting these invoices and marking them as paid through a special data exchange. And if we go back into the invoice, we can see that the notes we typed up have carried over to the approval process, and we have the timestamp for when we approved the invoice. And that is the conclusion to your training. We look forward to you using the system, and if you should ever need assistance, please feel free to reach out to us, and we'll be happy to help you. Thank you very much.